Hey, y'all, it's me, your host, Coach Pilar Arthur Sneed. Thanks so much for joining me here for another episode of the Last 10th podcast. You know, and I know that I'm going to say it, but it's really true. Every single week, I get so excited that before I even start recording, I have to take a pause because I can jack everything up. So I just take a moment to get myself together. And this week is no different. I am super excited to welcome Sachs to the show. Sun is the CEO and co-founder of an application called Rewire app. I am a user of the app myself. I love this application because it brings together performance and mindfulness together, as you know, mindful run, coaching and training. So, Sun, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks so much, Pilar. I really appreciate it and looking forward to chatting.
It's my pleasure. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me. So, Sun, where I usually like to start is I really appreciate it when guests tell me a little bit more about themselves. So tell me a little bit about you, anything that you would like to share.
Sure. Yeah, the sort of the origin story behind Rewire is pretty personal to me, and I'm happy to kind of give you the highlights. But basically, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a an area and still is to this day, which is sort of known for endurance sports. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a sort of a tent pole for that. And when I started on endurance sports, really looking for a sense of empowerment and kind of a physical outlet, um, I started in bike racing at a pretty early age, at 12,
Mm-hmm.
and worked my way up to an elite level in
Mm-hmm.
several off-road disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
Was all in, like so all in that I dropped out of college.
Oh, wow.
Pursued it full time.
Wow.
Um, and the journey was amazing. To be honest, I didn't have tremendous success,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up burning out and getting injured, and retiring from my sport at about 26.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what being a determined person and a willful person, I spent the next several decades
Mm-hmm.
trying to unpack that and
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand how I could continue to try to reach my potential and what went wrong, and what how I could be better.
Mm-hmm.
So that journey included spending more than a decade looking at data.
Mm-hmm.
Quantified self before HRV was really known.
Mm-hmm.
More than a decade ago, I was using it.
Mm-hmm.
I was measuring all kinds of objective and subjective data, looking at my macros, literally looking at my urine every day, measuring my
Wow.
sleep. Yes, all of this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
in the end, the only measurement that was correlative to my recovery and my adaptation to training was HRV. So it's like, okay, this is a great metric. I'm putting this in my toolkit. And this is before all the wearables were using it. And so I continued down the path,
Mm-hmm.
um, recognizing that we're not just our physical self, that there's many other aspects to our performance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I started to pursue meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the kind of personality that I, go all in with everything. So
I am quite a bit the same way. I can relate.
I get a sense for that. Um, yes, and that's a powerful thing. So I always try to seek mastery, and what I ended up doing was I read a book called Autobiography of a Yogi,
Mm-hmm.
written in the 1920s by Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the original yogis that brought yoga and really the kind of the more meditative practice, the Kriya practice, to the United States. Um, and I went all in. I signed a lifelong oath to never reveal any of the secrets. I was
Okay.
meditating 3 to 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Um, and I worked my way up to this level called Kriyaban, which is basically the level where they reveal all the master secrets.
Wow.
um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And I continue to do that practice to this day. The only thing that I've modified is the amount of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 3 to 4 hours sort of has its trade-offs,
Mm-hmm.
and is really challenging. But I took the idea of mindfulness and put that in my toolkit, and
Mm-hmm.
that became an invaluable resource for self-awareness, for promoting a calm mind, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly important. What I like to say is I'd rather have a calm mind than a hard mind.
Mm. Love that.
Um, and then a few years after that, I became aware of the science around resilience training for the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Got so excited I wanted to be a test subject, but there were European studies and there's no way for me to get out there. So I just like, okay, it's going to come to market. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's definitely going to come to market. It never did. Year after year, it never did.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was on the bike trainer and I had this epiphany for how it could be done. And the part I left out of my story is after I retired, I pursued a career in software development.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I knew how to create the solution that would bring it to market.
Mm-hmm.
Got together with my co-founders, including Rosala, who you've spent some time with,
Mm-hmm.
Cody and Ed, and we basically built, from those learnings from that journey that I've had, we've sort of built in all of those components, but in a way that is very, very sensitive to the busy athlete lifestyle. You know, can
Yes.
can someone measure, all those metrics I was doing? The average person's not going to do that. Can
Mm-hmm.
someone spend 3 to 4 hours meditating? The average person's not going to do that.
It's
Can, are they going to, like they did in the lab, put a keyboard on their bike trainer, on their treadmill with a thing and push all the buttons? No, the average person's not going to do that. So we
yes.
basically distilled everything down to something that was much more palatable and usable for the
Mm-hmm.
average athlete, with the idea that taking a holistic approach would really help everyone not only reach their potential, but also do so with longevity. So they won't hopefully burn out like I did.
Mm-hmm.
How many athletes do we lose to burnout? It's
Mm-hmm.
unfathomable. We
Mm-hmm.
lose, and by lose I mean they walk away from the sport. We lose millions,
Mm-hmm.
millions, literally. Like how
Mm-hmm.
many college athletes, how many high school athletes,
Mm-hmm.
how many people like me who try to pursue a professional career and burn out? Like there's just so many.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's just so much. There's so many threads that I can pull here. I
Mm-hmm.
want to go back first to just a definition for folks who are listening who may not know nor understand what HRV is, but if you can explain that for folks who may be listening.
Yes, happy to. So HRV is, when you think about everyone knows sort of their resting heart rate, or generally understands what that is, which is like the number of beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
What people often are not aware of is that what HRV is the beat to beat measurement between the heartbeats. So in other words, if you have a heart rate of, let's say, 60 beats per minute, you might assume that at the second mark, your heart beats. At the next second mark, your heart beats, and it's perfectly timed. That's
Mm-hmm.
not, in fact, the case.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little variability, thus
Mm-hmm.
the heart rate variability between
Mm-hmm.
those beats.
Mm-hmm.
And the best analogy I can think of, which I like to use, most people can kind of get it, is if you're driving a car. A car has something similar. It has RPM,
Mm-hmm.
revolutions per minute. So
Mm-hmm.
you push on the gas and you see the RPM go up, right? It goes, it responds to
Yes.
the request to go faster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, in a good car, in a healthy car, you push the gas on, it goes up. When you take your foot off the pedal, it goes down immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's ready to be dynamic, whether you want to go slow or fast.
Right.
A car that's not so healthy, if you push the gas on, it goes up. and you take your foot off the gas and it stays hovering at this,
Mm-hmm.
high rate,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually not very dynamic.
Right.
It's basically gets stuck and it
Yes.
can't adapt to the range of demands. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the same thing with heart rate variability. That's why when we look at heart rate variability, it's measured in milliseconds, and what we want to see is a dynamic range,
Mm-hmm.
not a super consistent range. So if you literally your heart rate beat every second with no variation, that would be a sign of either a lot of stress
Mm-hmm.
to your body. Probably be next to impossible to have it be perfect, but in general, if there's not a lot of variance, it means that your body can't respond or adapt quickly from a cardiovascular standpoint to stress.
Okay.
So what you want to see in a heart rate variability is a higher number, not a
Okay.
lower number.
Okay.
And what that number is the average time between heartbeats,
Mm-hmm.
or the dynamic range between heartbeats.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a good way to look at it, is
Mm-hmm.
just you want your body and your cardiovascular system to dynamically respond to any of the demands you have.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see your heart rate variability go down,
Mm-hmm.
that usually means either your body's not responding well to the training,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you're getting sick, or you have
Mm-hmm.
other stressors that are getting that are sort of elevating what we call your sympathetic nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically your fight or flight system.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So then tying that into the Rewire app, tell me a little bit more about how the Rewire app works, the purposes for athletes using the app. Tell me a little bit more.
yeah. So like the it's a holistic approach, and we have three primary, what we call pillars in the app.
Mm-hmm.
One part of the system is designed to build more mental resilience,
Mm-hmm.
and that resilience is a generic capability that you can use to improve in your sport, to push yourself harder, reach your capacity, but also just deal with the demands of life. So you're
Mm-hmm.
basically building generic resilience for your mind, which
Mm-hmm.
is useful on many levels.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is creating what we call mindset recovery, which is a combination of different protocols we call a recipe, but basically a series of mindfulness, sports psychology techniques,
Mm-hmm.
breathing techniques, a bunch of different tools you can use in combination to help yourself recover.
Mm-hmm.
And why that's important, even just from a sports standpoint, is oftentimes people are not aware of the negative impact of cognitive fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we think about recovery, right, we go out for a long run. We're like, my poor legs. Let
That's
me,
right.
if I can afford the Normatec boots, I'm going to put those on. If I can
That's
do
right.
like a hot, like a salt bath, or ice bath, I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll I'll take out the hypervolt,
You
massage my
don't you
leg.
you have you been at my house?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you're doing all this stuff, but what about your mind? Might be even more tired, because guess what? Your mind never gets a break, right?
That's right.
Your mind had to work really hard to get you through that run, and then on top of that, it had to deal with all the stress that you have in your life,
That's right.
and and if you didn't get a good night's sleep, you'd even allow it to really recover. And so what we're saying is, hey, you really better be mindful about your cognitive fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
and that leads us to the third pillar, which is our holistic readiness system.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to measuring readiness, many of us are aware of different wearables. Like, I have my Apple Watch on. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I have my Aura Ring on.
Okay.
I'm measuring my HRV in three different ways.
I used to do the same.
Honestly, yeah,
I'd have my Garmin. Well, this is Polar
yeah,
now. I don't do Garmin
yeah,
anymore, but I have my
yeah,
Polar. I'd have my Fitbit. I
yeah,
have like
yeah. Oh
three
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah, yeah.
going at
I
the
mean,
same
that's another problem we try to solve. It's kind of ridiculous, right? Like, we're
time.
we're putting all this data in all these places, and we don't
Yeah.
necessarily know
Yeah.
what it all means holistically, right?
Yes.
So what our system does is it takes all that data from all those devices, if you like devices. If you don't like devices, that's fine too.
Yes.
But it'll take all the data that's available, it'll bring it into the system. We call that the physiological measure. So it's going to understand if you're tracking your sleep, how your sleep was last night, if you're tracking your HRV, how that is, your resting heart rate, your training load. It's going to understand a lot of things about the physical side. Then, unlike anything else out there, it's then going to measure your level of cognitive fatigue with a live test. So you've done this before. You tap the screen every time you see a shape. It's a standard test called a psychomotor vigilance test, also known as a simple reaction time test, and that is a scientifically validated test, which basically assesses your level of cognitive fatigue by measuring your reaction time to tapping on the screen, your accuracy, what we call lapses, which are basically, we've all had them, we all have them throughout the day, but we're not always aware. The moment that you sort of space out for a second, we pick that up. So if you have more space out sessions in this test, we're like, uh-oh, we know you're a little bit off today.
Yes.
And then we'll put that on a scale to compare it to your baseline. So we know, guess what? You're 5%, 10% off your baseline today, cognitively.
Yes.
Then we ask some psychological questions, and these are actually ones that NASA developed for astronaut readiness. And,
wow. Okay.
Yep. And these questions are highly correlative to your emotional and subjective assessment of your ability to perform. So we'll ask questions. It's not a lot of questions. It's 4 questions, but we'll ask you, like, what's your level of frustration? So if you're, and this is something you can do outside of the app, if you notice that you have a greater amount of frustration, like let's just say you get up in the morning and something's not going right and you get unusually pissed off about it, right? What happens in your brain is that basically as you get more cognitively fatigued, your ability to have cognitive control over your emotions declines. And so if you have more emotionality all of a sudden, and this is where the mindfulness comes into play. Notice that. Whoa, why am I overreacting? Well, guess what? You're not overreacting just because you're being emotional. You're overreacting because your brain is tired, and you should pay attention to that. So we basically take the physical, the emotional, and the cognitive data, and then we give you an overall score. But then the unique thing, I mean, everybody gives you a score, right? And it's always 0 to 100. But the unique thing is then we'll break it down for you. So we'll say, like, here's how you're at cognitively, physically, and emotionally. So you can kind of pinpoint what your problem is. Everybody has a problem.
Indeed.
You'll find your problem, and then we'll curate or automatically create a mindfulness / mindset recovery session for you to make the most of your day. Because the worst is when you're using these things, you pull up whatever device it is that's telling you your readiness, and it says either, this is what they always say, no matter what, they always say this, either you're great, go out and train, or you know what, you should take a day off. But
indeed,
that does not work for most people.
That's
We're not professional athletes. Even if I was a professional athlete, I still probably couldn't take a day off. Like, you just can't. That's not realistic, and it's not helpful. What we need to do is, okay, this is the reality. This is where you're at. Let's give you tools to make the best of your day. So that's sort of how it works. It's like in the morning, as a morning practice, you spend 90 seconds doing this test. It tells you where you're at. It gives you some tools you can use throughout the day. And then when you're particularly sharp, it'll recommend that you do some resilience training, which you can do in the app, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You do that 3 times a week, and you're going to see an improvement.
So. Even up to an hour, which is insane.
Well, okay. So you want to hear insane, and people who are listening won't be able to appreciate this.
I should choose my language better. It's not insane. It's just unbelievable. 60 minutes.
Yeah. So I did a 45-minute session this morning, but that's nowhere near as impressive as on our website, we did a challenge to see who could go the longest without what we call tapping out, which basically means you either get all the answers wrong and you get tapped out automatically, or you basically say, I give up, and then you click the button and you're done. Guess how long like the person that won, guess how long they went?
24 hours?
No. 8 hours. Eight hours.
That's over the top.
Yeah.
Because you know, the neuro training part, like I know I should do it more. And at the beginning, when I first started doing it, was definitely challenging to do, just because, like, you know, I'm just challenged in that way. And so I would just be like, what I do.
Yeah. I mean, it's designed to be confusing. So like the science behind it is based on a well-known psychological phenomenon and a test called response inhibition. So that's just a fancy word for impulse control. So in other words, we're giving you these cognitive questions, often, to your point, upwards of, if you do a 15-minute session, that's maybe 1,000 questions. So that's a lot.
Yes.
And they're simple in their display, but basically your intuition is always wrong. So it requires just a little bit of extra thought as opposed to just quickly tapping it without thinking. We're forcing you to think.
Yes.
And so the other part of it is, you may have not have done this yet, but once you start to get good at it and you're getting 100% all the time, what you need to do is go into the app and turn on auto levels, and that will be brutal for you.
I have not done that.
Yes, you don't know. I mean, let's put it this way. I have not made it past all the levels, and I've been doing this longer than anybody, so it is brutal.
But what I love about the neuro training aspect, and it's the way that I kind of tend to think of going out on a long run or doing training for any particular event, is that it is allowing you within the confines of this space to get frustrated and get angry in this moment, and kind of like up your level and ability to handle that level of stress, so that when you go out into the world and you actually are ready to perform at your race or whatever, something happens and you're not like, I can't handle it.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's the design of it, is, you know, if we just rely on physical training to build up resilience, we know what happens, right? Like as you get more fit, like first, like it's a big deal to go on an hour run. Then that becomes easy. Then you go on a 2-hour run. Then that becomes easy. What happened? Like for you to get any kind of cognitive resilience, pretty soon you're going to be having to go on 4-hour runs all the time. That's not going to work, right? And it's only the last 10 minutes of the run that you get a little benefit. It's kind of a as we like to say, a blunt instrument. Like it's really not very precise. So like rather, let's create a lot of opportunity to be in those moments, almost like the most challenging moment in sport. Let's let you practice being in those moments, and let's let you have to recover from a mistake or something. Like we know that the longer the race or the longer the event, the more unpredictable it is, and there's going to be things that you can't expect, right? And resilience is about accepting what is and figuring out what you can do about it. And so this system lets you, like you said, get frustrated, mess up, and then have to recover. And believe me, you have to recover, because if you don't, it's gonna cascade into a whole bunch of wrong answers. So
that's like, exactly right. And then as you said, then you're just done, because you've just maxed out in the program. So I love that part about it. And the other part that I love about the Rewire app is I really love the mindfulness part, because, and this will take me into my next set of questions for you, you know, talking about your experiences as essentially being a yogi. I love that you can, within the space of the app, because I call myself a bad Buddhist. I was actually counting, like, how many years have I been practicing? I've been practicing now. Let me put my practicing in quotes. I've been practicing Buddhism. I've been, practicing Buddhist for about 15 years now. And I am really terrible about on the cushion practice. For me,
Yeah.
my practice has always been, sort of like, how can I take what I've learned, my Dharma practice, how can I take that into the world? Because if I'm not better with people, then what good is it?
Right.
What,
You're just doing it to check the box.
what good is it to, what
Yeah.
good is it to be a great meditation master if I'm never, belly to belly
Yeah.
with folks? So I'm a terrible on the cushion person. So what this app does for me is it allows me some time, 4 minutes out of my day to get some on the cushion time, and to also get some of that, I forget the words that you use, but also to get, the empowerment training and feel empowered and motivation. And so I really love that about the app.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. And coming from another meditator, I mean, the thing is, like, it's such a long-term practice and commitment, meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And the tricky part is that a lot of people in this modern world, it doesn't fit into their lifestyle, and they don't necessarily see immediate results. So that part, it's very hard to build a habit when you're almost doing it on faith, hoping that one day you'll be transformed.
One day I shall miraculously fly. I'm sure of it.
Yes, I'm still working on the levitating part. I maybe in this life, maybe the next, I will achieve that. But it's, the thing is, some of the neuroscience that we have built into the system, there's been some interesting studies. So as you know, we have binaural beats integrated, which binaural beats are a very interesting phenomenon. It's basically two different frequencies, one in each ear. So whenever you use binaural beats, you always have to wear headphones. And basically they're because they're two frequencies, what your brain does is synthesize them, which it's so good at doing. And that synthesis is on third frequency, which is a very low level frequency you normally wouldn't be able to hear, that mimics exactly brain waves. So then what your brain does is go, oh, I should be doing this. And it starts to, it's called brain entrainment. It starts to try to match that wave. And that wave we're projecting is either, let's be calm, let's be in a recovery state, let's be a little focused, let's be a little bit alive, a little bit alert. And one of the studies, recent studies in, I think it was 2020, they basically took 15 experienced meditators and 15 non-meditators. They've never meditated before. And they subjected them to 90 minutes of cognitive tasks, similar to what we do in the app. But 90 minutes, that's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
So then they measured their level of cognitive fatigue. And then they said, okay, you meditators go off and meditate. And the non-meditators just put the earbuds in and listen to binaural beats. And when they came back and they remeasured everybody, the level of cognitive fatigue was extremely similar. Like, in other words, the non-meditators had almost the same benefit as the meditators, and they didn't have to learn anything. All they had to do was just put earbuds in and sit there. So that, when we think about, like, what tools can we bring to people that are more accessible than a meditative practice, not to say you shouldn't also have that, but throughout the day, you can't always find a cushion and a calm place. You may only have, for me, one of my favorite sessions is the 2-minute session. I have a big meeting, I'm all stressed, I'm going in 5 directions, and I'm like, I have 3 minutes. Let me put this 2-minute one on. I'm going to hit the reset button, and I'm going to be ready for my next thing, my next challenge, and that we couldn't be more excited about, because we think it'll help a lot of people.
Absolutely. I agree. It helps me personally tremendously. Like I said, bad Buddhist. It is. I should start another podcast in which I talk about that, where I talk to other meditators about, my being a bad Buddhist, and we can talk about meditation practices. It'd be a really great show. Really great show.
It'd be very, very cathartic for everybody, I'm sure.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more. I read like a little blurb on another show that you appeared on, where you
Yeah.
talked about being involved in distance training and using that as a method to overcome trauma. So it would be
Yeah.
really great. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And you talked about getting involved in bike sports, and tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all come to sport for different reasons. What I hear a lot from other athletes, and certainly it's similar to my journey, is just if you have experienced a lot of trauma, or you have a lot of just stress, there is something very therapeutic about getting out on the road or on the trails and just letting all of that go, and also just working through it.
Agreed.
We're working through it. Yeah.
Agreed.
There's nothing better for me. I mean, I definitely feel like sport in that way has saved my life many times, and it has been a journey of healing as well. I had a pretty traumatic life as a kid. Everybody's had all kinds of trauma, so I don't want to say that mine is exceptional or unique, but just a lot of neglect and lack of care as a kid, and it led to a lot of accidents and near-death experiences, and really being on my own at about 5, where I just had to deal with all kinds of crap, and being bullied a lot for many years, literally broken bones, all that stuff. And so sport, it gave me a sense of empowerment, and it also gave me an outlet for all of that healing that I needed to do. And I think that is not a very uncommon story. I think there's a lot of people that are drawn to, especially like endurance sports, where there's a lot of quote unquote suffering, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, myself personally, I am a late to life runner. I only discovered running at 43. I'm 50 now. And
good for you.
I know, crazy, right? And once I found this space, I mean, I was already kind of like going into therapy, because I found myself in a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, these old patterns that I have, they're just starting to kind of like reemerge. And I don't want to go back to this place that I was 10 years ago or whatever it is. I don't want to be that person. So I got back into therapy, and then simultaneously kind of found this running thing. And what I found through running was that it really is this healing. For me, it's been this healing experience. Like, I would not be doing this if I didn't find running. And I never could have imagined doing this, like talking to you right now, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Could never have imagined it.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. Really? Yeah, like small changes, can lead to these, monumental evolutions for us as individuals. Like, we can't underestimate just taking that first step.
Absolutely.
And what that's going to do. Like, if you ever done that exercise where you think about something really important in your life, and then you try to trace back all the steps that happened for that moment to occur, and you basically lose track after a few thousand steps.
That's exactly right. Exactly. So at what point in your journey, right? You mentioned that, you became a software developer. you meditated for 3 to 4 hours in a day, right? When did all of this sort of come together into this application and to where you are, to where you are now? Now it's out to market. Like I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
when there was like some testing phases and it was kind of coming. And I've been watching what you've been doing
Yeah.
literally since seeing it somewhere and getting emails and being like, that is for me. So
Yeah.
tell me
Nice.
more. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a journey. We started the company 3.5 years ago,
Mhm.
and we spent 3 years developing it. The first inspiration, again, I was just on the bike trainer, and I was like, this is we call in the business a UI problem, which is a user interface problem. Like,
Okay.
there's a lot of, there's all this science. It's just sitting there unused.
Hmm.
People hear about it, they get excited about it, and it's going nowhere. So like, what what kind of interface could we create that would
Hmm.
make this accessible and easy?
Hmm.
So literally, like, behind me is like my work table, and I
Hmm.
started soldering some hardware together and
Hmm.
worked with my first co-founder Cody, and we built an app and had the hardware. There's a hardware piece we haven't even talked about, but
Hmm. Yes.
we put it all together, and within 6 weeks we started beta testing with athletes. So we spent
Wow.
a good roughly 3 years testing
Hmm.
and iterating,
Hmm.
working with scientists, validating everything,
Hmm.
um, getting a ton of feedback. And we
Hmm.
continue to do that. We have
Hmm.
multiple beta groups that we work with every week. We do, as you know, customer interviews, and we really
Hmm.
try to understand how else we could make it better.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a labor of love, to be doing that for that long before it's even live.
That's
um,
exactly right. Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
yeah, now we're super excited because we're seeing this is really made for the average athlete,
Hmm.
but we're seeing athletes of all levels. We're seeing people from the military. We're seeing executives. We're seeing emergency workers.
Mm.
We're seeing professional teams where all
Wow.
these people are getting drawn to it without
Wow.
a lot of marketing on our side. They're just
Hmm.
simply hearing, like, when they hear it, like you said, they're like, oh, that's for me, or oh, that makes sense, or oh, that's a new frontier.
Yes.
And so yeah, we're just really pumped to be here, and we're just trying to help every athlete have a long career in what they love,
Mm.
and be the best that they can be. We spend, probably, you could argue, some of our most precious time doing our sports.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So what do you envision for Rewire over the next, say, 2 to 5 years? What's the next step? Because right now you have
Yeah.
just the in-app, you hit the in-app to do the neural
Hmm.
training. And I do
Yeah.
remember that there was a piece of hardware where you'd be clicking it with your thumbs or something like this. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more about that,
Yeah.
if you can.
Yeah. No, I can. I can. Yeah. Literally, this was the first thing I made. So, but these are
Oh
the final
yeah.
the final product. I was just
Yeah,
using them
yeah, yeah.
today.
Sweet.
Yeah. So you can hold them in your hands, but we
Mhm,
also have a strap, so it's
mhm,
easier, like if you go for a run. So what's
mhm,
cool about this? This was the epiphany, was the creation of these, which is basically, um, what they did in the lab is they took the keyboard, and they basically attached
mhm,
it
mhm,
to a treadmill, and
mhm,
then put a big monitor up, right?
mhm,
And you push the buttons while you're trying to run. That's not going to
mhm,
work.
mhm.
I mean, not going to work in the real world. It's fine in the
That's
lab.
ex that's exactly right.
So what we do is you connect the buttons with the app,
Mhm,
and these are not live yet. We've had some challenges with getting through manufacturing and supply chain stuff, as you might
mhm,
imagine. But
mhm, mhm,
later this year, these will be available, and basically you can just put them in your hands,
mhm,
again, with the strap so they don't fall out, and you
mhm,
just go out for a run. And
mhm,
the brain training is audio based,
mhm,
so you can enjoy your surroundings. You can pay attention to what you're doing. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to hold the phone in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
but you can virtually do any sport while
Mm-hmm.
you're layering on brain training.
Mm-hmm.
So this morning I did, as I mentioned, 45 minutes of brain training
Mm-hmm.
and I overlaid it on top of an hour threshold session.
Wow.
A threshold session for an hour, you're basically going right at the edge of your maximum the whole
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you there's something very satisfying when you're in that pain cave about focusing on pressing the buttons as
Okay.
opposed to just sitting there going, this sucks, this hurts.
Okay. Okay.
Instead, you're like, I got to get this button. I got to get this next question. Trust me.
If you have
It's
them ready
what,
by May,
yeah.
I'll be running a 50 miler. I will
Oh
probably
boy.
need that. So let's go. Let's go, son.
All right. That's a deadline. We got a deadline to make.
You need to have those done by Memorial Day weekend, okay?
Okay, deal.
It's my first
Yeah.
one. I anticipate a lot of pain caving.
Yeah, better to be in a pain cave you can control than the one that you're not prepared for. So
all about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it brings me back to like the Stoic philosophers. Like what's interesting about them is that they believed in preparation for the worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of like that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's spend the time in the worst moments that you'll have so that they don't have to be the worst moments.
That's
So
exactly
that
right.
you could be like, you have more capacity to endure. And what's interesting about the science is when you start to get adapted, which typically takes, 6 weeks, maybe a little longer,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your level of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And you do develop resilience in sports. So people who are well trained, they're going to have a greater amount of resilience, but they can still grow quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit using the
Mm-hmm.
system. But what they found is that when they would then test the adapted athlete, they'd be a little more resilient in the first workout. But then
Mm-hmm.
if they'd made them do like a double workout, the
Mm-hmm.
second workout, when it was really hard,
Mm-hmm.
they have more resilience. So it's
Mm.
kicking in when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, it gives you a wider range, so you're not hitting that limit in normal situations. And when you push it really hard, you actually can go quite a bit further before you start things.
Mm-hmm.
The wheels start to fall off, as they
Mm-hmm.
say.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. That's
yeah.
awesome. So, is there anything at all that you want to share or talk about that I have not asked?
That is a good question. One of my uh, most favorite topics is flow.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's
That's a
that's
great
always
topic.
fun to chat about.
Let's talk about that. I love that. So
Okay, all right.
people may not be aware of what flow is, but my sense of it is that it's that moment when time and you don't care about
Mhm.
time, anything else that's going on.
Yeah.
You are in it, and you could do
Yes.
whatever that thing is that you're doing for
Yeah.
hours and hours
Yes.
and hours.
Yes.
Flow.
Yes.
Have
Totally.
you
Yeah.
experienced this?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, in my bike career, I spent 7 years as a bike messenger, and
Mm,
that's basically I was in Seattle, and if people don't know downtown Seattle, it's extremely hilly. Like
mhm,
it's like downtown San Francisco.
mhm.
And basically the objective would be like I'd get to a an attorney's office, and they would say, "We have 10 minutes to get this filed, or my client loses their house." And you're just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go." So you're like going all out through traffic, doing a lot of illegal maneuvers, I must admit. You're running up 6 flights of stairs, like it's this full on sprint, and you're doing
Mhm.
that all the time. And I spent thousands of hours in flow state because of
Wow.
that.
Wow.
And so it's very close to my heart, and I feel pretty intimate with it.
Mhm.
And It's exactly what you describe. I mean, what happens is your focus narrows. You have a calm, almost a post meditation state where
Mm-hmm.
you can observe
Mm-hmm.
everything around you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the effort that you're putting forth somehow feels easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost it's such a higher state that it's almost like the physical demands don't matter,
Mm-hmm.
and you can look at things objectively but also in this holistic way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a recent example. This past fall I was in a bike race, and we were going down this really rough part of the trail.
Mm-hmm.
The guy in front of me hit this rock and flipped through the air. So he was up in the air with his bike, like rotating, and I was right behind him. So I basically realized that by the time he lands, if I haven't already decided where he's going to land so that I'm not there, I'm going to crash into him, and the
Mm-hmm.
person behind me is going to crash into me. But meanwhile, the reason he crashed was because there's rocks and holes and all this stuff all around me. So I have to focus on the terrain, trying to do the geometry or the calculus to figure out where he's going to land and make sure that I'm not there,
Yes.
while maneuvering around the objects on the road, while thinking of the person behind me.
Yes.
Suddenly things just went
Yeah.
super slow,
Yeah.
and I took in all of the data at once,
Yes.
maneuvered around. He landed, I was on the opposite side, got around, made sure the guy behind me didn't hit me, maneuvered around the objects, and I was right through it. And if I would have been
Wow.
instead been like, oh no, I would have just
Oh,
focused on one of those things,
That's
and
right.
I would have absolutely been taken out. There is no doubt. Like
Wow.
the only way to survive that, I mean, it wasn't like I was going to die, but the only way to get through that without getting hurt was to absorb everything at once. And what that is a time shift, because your brain goes, it's literally slows everything down.
Yes.
It's like those action movies where you see the person jumps up and then they're like moving in slow motion. It's exactly like that. It is exactly like, because
like Steve
yeah,
Rogers.
yeah, it's like the bullets coming at you and you're like, I have all the time in the world to figure out how I want to move around that,
Yes.
grab the bullet, send it back to that guy.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
that's what it's like when you have those moments.
Yes.
The only caveat I would say in my case is, like, if it's a highly technical situation and you don't have the technical ability to back it up,
Mm.
then you are kind of in trouble regardless.
Then it's just,
Yeah,
it's a hot
yeah.
mess anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because if you can't make the bike bump, forget it.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. You got to have some baseline skills to get out of this. But flow isn't reserved just, I mean, it definitely happens in athletics and sport for sure. And I think part of it is that, you're sort of there are many different primers for getting into flow state. In my example, the primer was a fight or flight situation with a lot of data points and a lot of things I needed to understand quickly, and my body just it just literally flicked the switch to flow state, so I could get out of it. And that's a lot of it, I've been in that state so many times, my body knew what to do. So that is a great trigger, but it's not necessarily for everybody.
Right.
Other things, going into something with a calm, self-aware mind is a great trigger for flow state. And you can get that from meditation, you can get that from using our app. Like, just, you're never going to get into flow in an agitated, amped up, like if you just like rock out to some crazy music right before a race and you're like, I'm gonna do this. That's not gonna work for flow state. I mean, it might get you amped up and you might like go out really hard, and that's great, but it's not gonna work.
mean, I don't know. So for some people, maybe some hardcore heavy metal is how
Yeah,
they do it.
for sure. Yeah,
I don't know. I personally couldn't, but
yeah,
for
yeah,
maybe other people it might work. I mean, I often think that flow for me as far as running is like it's like this elusive thing. However, in talking about binaural beats, I ran a race a few weeks ago and I had my headphones on. And then I have like a playlist which is just it's a bunch of stuff. It's like
yeah.
everything, literally everything. Binaural beats, meditation stuff, rock and whatever, it's everything. The
Nice.
the playlist flipped on this sleepy time binaural beats as I'm running. And I'm looking at my watch, and my watch says my heart rate is like, I don't know, it's like 90 or something. And I'm going,
Wow.
what the heck is going? Is my watch? What is going on? And it's just, it's just playing. And literally for the entire time, this song was
Yeah.
playing on my headphones for about maybe like 2 hours or something like this, because it was I was like, dude, I don't even know, it was a long time, and my
Yes.
heart rate was about 90 beats per
Yeah.
minute for the
Amazing.
entire time that I was running that. Have
Yeah.
I ever done that like regularly?
Right.
No, but that
Right.
was like the best running I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
I was
That's
like, I need
amazing.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. We have in the app, we have a section in the mindset recovery called performance challenge. And we
Mm.
have like 90, 120-minute binaural beat sessions
Ooh,
for that purpose. Like
yes.
if you're going to do a really hard demanding workout,
Mm.
countering it with something around binaural beats that are going to keep your mind calm. Like just
Mm-hmm.
think about the cascading effect that happens if you go out for a run. Let's say you're a little bit sore,
Mm.
and you start thinking, wow, I'm a little bit sore, this doesn't
Mm.
feel that good.
Mm.
Think about how many times in your mind you think about, how hard this is and how
Mm-hmm.
sore you are.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like thousands of times.
Indeed.
That you're telling your body, I can't do this, and
That's
then
right.
you're trying to push against what you're telling your body.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do something, binaural beats, whatever, if you can get into a calm state where you're not feeding all those negative thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
one, you're just truly saving energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like endurance athletes, um, you know, uh, we don't want to burn a lot of glucose, which is what your brain needs and what your
Mm-hmm.
brain uses.
Mm-hmm.
Just burning that all up, thinking about stuff, right?
That's
You
right.
you should reserve all of
Getting
that
all,
energy. Yeah,
you don't
save
need
save
that.
all save all that fuel. You know, the blend of glucose and fats. Save that for your running, your physicality, not your
That's
brain.
right.
So
That's
if you
right.
could turn your brain off, it makes a big difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was my one moment of flow.
That's a special moment.
It was. And then as
Yeah,
soon and I
yeah,
know that it was the binaural beats because it like after the song was over, after it was done, then it was great because I was nearing the end of the race. Then like another like a song came on, like just a regular song, and then my heart rate went boing.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
It just went right back up. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is crazy.
That's so cool.
I mean, in that
Yeah,
sense, it really is, to me, it is a testament just in thinking about what you're doing with the app and how we can use all those things that you have within the app to our benefit and really to increase our performance because it's the evidence is there. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah. And
evidence is there.
there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So one that's right out of science fiction, which your listeners will probably appreciate.
Yes.
Um, so we use in the mindset recovery, we use something called subliminal priming.
Yes.
Okay, so what that is, we've all heard the marketing stories of where they like would flash buy popcorn in the movie theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be considered what they call in subliminal priming an action word. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's something that is a trigger that, and guess what? It does work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we're not doing that. What we're doing is we're showing positive imagery, and what we're actually showing is a smiling face,
Mm-hmm.
male, female, toggling back and forth, a
Mm-hmm.
smiling face subliminally. And
Mm-hmm.
why do we do a smiling face? Well, a lot of times you'll hear coaches will say, smile when you run. And it's like, what are you, like, why do I have to smile? That just seems so fake. But guess what? One of your cranial nerves, one of the most important ones as it relates to fight or flight, is the vagus nerve, and that travels through all the major organs
Mm-hmm.
uh, into the muscles of your face,
Mm-hmm.
and it is actually analyzing
Mm-hmm.
the state of your face to
Mm-hmm.
help understand if you are in a fight or flight situation. And
Mm-hmm.
why is that? Because we're social animals. So um, it's, you know, your optic nerve, you're looking at another face, you're looking at a person. If you think of like a herd of animals and imagine one animal is showing a fear response,
Mm-hmm.
what are all the other animals going to do? They're going to be like, whoa, there's something crazy over there. They're going to get ready, right?
Yes.
Because we're social animals, we do the same thing
Mm-hmm.
with each other's faces.
Mm-hmm.
So if I started screaming right now like crazy, yes, if I started doing that, you'd probably laugh at me on the outside, but your
Okay.
biology would go, oh, we're not in a safe environment. This is really dangerous. And your
Yes.
cortisol levels would go up. You'd prepare for a fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So the opposite is true if we show you smiling faces.
Mm-hmm.
Subliminally, it has a greater impact than just showing you the face. Like
Mm-hmm.
the efficacy is enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you look at the screen, you're just seeing effectively what is this little cross symbol. And
Mm-hmm.
the cross symbol is called a fixation cross. That's making sure that you're looking in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we subliminally prime you with a smiling face. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually, there's a specific protocol that we follow that we got out of the lab and the research where it's non-smiling faces, then smiling faces,
Mm-hmm.
mixing gender, mixing
Mm-hmm.
things up so that you don't become like dulled to the
Mm-hmm.
effect.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it creates a homeostasis in your body where you're like, okay, I'm in a safe environment. I can let
Mm-hmm.
my guard down.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that, it helps with your motivation. It helps with your
Mm-hmm.
level of cognitive fatigue and recovery. All these things happen when you're in a homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, for the listeners that try out the app, when you see that plus sign, that's
Mm-hmm.
what's happening behind the scenes. All
Mm-hmm.
this stuff is happening
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes. We're speaking to your deep biology that you're okay.
Love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. So, if folks want to try Rewire, what can they do?
Well, as a bad CEO, I forgot the special marketing link that I'm supposed to
That's okay. You
say.
can email me.
So, yes, we'll get that in the show notes, but you can go to rewirefitness.app
Okay.
and that will get you there. And basically, anyone can start a free 7-day trial.
Mm-hmm.
You can experience all the features of the app, and I'm definitely not a salesperson, but we're offering a very discounted rate right now. It
Mm-hmm.
would be way less than a cup of coffee a day
There you
to
go.
sign up for a year. So it's well worth it, and hope everybody checks it out.
I hope so too. I really think that folks should. I absolutely, absolutely love the Rewire app. It's like a tool in my toolbox.
Nice. That's awesome.
So I have one last question for you, son. One last question. If you had advice that you've ever been given, or if there's advice that you would like to give, what would it be?
That is a very good question. I think from my own journey, you know, I would just say be kind to yourself.
Mm.
A lot of us, a lot of our athletes, you know, we're all kind of, I don't want to generalize, but many of us are type A personalities or people that are very driven. And I've had to learn the hard way that, you know, just forcing things and not thinking about self care is a recipe for burnout. And, it's just like what we've learned as athletes about, recovering is that's where you actually adapt, and that's where you get stronger. Give yourself, if you don't use the app, give yourself 1 or 2 minutes to just sit down, maybe in front of a window and, with the sunlight. Do a simple breathing exercise. There's so many that you can do. You can look up box breathing or 4-7-8. It seems silly to say, like, oh, just breathe for 1 minute. What is that going to do? But how often do we actually stop and give ourselves just a moment of quiet? Pretty much never. So it surprisingly, even a minute is precious and has an impact. And if you start with a minute a day, you're going to feel better. You're going to perform better. And hopefully you'll start to appreciate the benefits of self-care, because there's a lot you can do there.
Absolutely. 100%. Love that. And I could not agree more. Sun, thank you so, so very much for joining me on the show today. I have had the best time chatting with you about Rewire, but also just everything that we talked about.
It's been really fun. Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. And
absolutely,
I got to get you some buttons.
I need those buttons.